of quite a lot of people who were involved in this workshop. So it was about how race and racism in sickle cell disorder, how it impacts the quality of care in the sickle cell community, and how we can change things for the better. So obviously, as we've been talking about, and as Zishan has highlighted for us through some of his extremely shocking facts about the past, the fact that there's been racism is definitely not a new thing, and the fact that it's impacted people who live with sickle cell is also not a new thing. So why is it that we're talking about it now? And there's particular reasons why it's kind of resurfaced. So there's been the Black Lives Matter movement. There's been the George Floyd murder and the reaction to this worldwide. In the UK, we've also had this report, all parliamentary report about No One's Listening, an inquiry into the avoidable deaths and failures of care for sickle cell patients. And that follows some really shocking cases of young people who have died with sickle cell completely needlessly due to very poor care. And then, of course, as we've mentioned a little bit earlier as well, there's been a differential impact of COVID on different populations based on ethnicity and different uptake of the vaccine, which has also had an impact. So it's kind of come back to the forefront. And we know that, as we've started off with this at the beginning of the session, that racism is a very difficult topic to start approaching, but with hope we find a way. So this is some funding we got in Oxford from the Wellcome Trust, and it was to do a public engagement project. And the way we structured it is, the first thing was to really find the right leaders. So we found two absolutely wonderful moderators that we knew through another project, and there was one white and one mixed heritage. And then we developed this core group. So this was 8 people, some patients, some doctors, some white, some black, some people with sickle cell, people who were looking after people with sickle cell. And so we had this really core group that we could run things past, and that we could discuss everything openly before we would open them up to the participants, so that we felt secure about what we were planning to do. And then we identified 25 participants. So we had people living with sickle cell, parents, carers. We had members of the medical profession, so doctors, medical students, nurses. And also we reached out to the wider community, so the Afro-Caribbean community. So we went through a couple of churches, and so that we had people who didn't have sickle cell, but were from the same ethnic background as a lot of our patients. We then ran the 3 workshops, which I'll tell you about in a second. We wrote a report, and now we're presenting it, and we presented it at the UK Forum for Hemoglobinopathy Disorders, and this is our second sort of wide platform to present it at. So we started off, as you can tell, I really like Mentimeter. We started off with a word cloud about what are the challenges and feelings that arise when we talk about race and racism. And these are the words people came up with: fear, guilt, anger, defensiveness, awkwardness, uncomfortable, shame. So there's a lot of, really big emotions, quite negative emotions about even thinking about trying to have this conversation, never mind actually having it. And then we had 3 workshops, and the first workshop was based around sharing stories, and that was really important because for us, we decided we wanted to prioritize the sort of individual stories and people building that bond between each other. And there was the moderator started every workshop with a really powerful way of sharing our values. And so we felt immediately within the first few minutes connected to everybody else that was on the workshop. And we felt we had a shared purpose, and we felt that we were building trust. So at that first workshop, we really bonded. I know that might be a bit a cringe word for me to be using, but we felt we were really bonding over what we were trying to do, how we were going to do it, and to hear people's personal stories. And it's not just the stories of people's experiences of racism, but it's also from maybe from some of the care providers. So there was a medical student who talked about having heard something racist on the ward and not feeling empowered to say anything. And there was somebody from Australia who said she felt she carried a lot of guilt about racism because of, in Australia, the history with the Aborigines. So that sharing of stories was for everybody. The second workshop, we worked on really identifying issues and problems, but also proposing solutions. It was very clear from our patient group that we didn't want this to be just for us to talk and talk and talk and nothing changes. So we really wanted to focus on the future and what we were going to do. So we were focusing on proposing solutions. And then in the third workshop, we now looked at possible actions, and we divided it up into what are the most important things we can do, and then what are the most doable. Now, unfortunately, they don't always overlap. So it'd be nice if the most important was also the easiest to do. Quite often it's the other way around, is the most important is the hardest to do. But at least we felt like if we could make a little bit of headway and accomplish some of the actions, we would feel we've done something positive. So what do we think was the keys to our success? So first of all, having an impartial and external experienced open-minded moderators, having a biracial team, in fact, I was supposed to change that to multiracial, sorry, having a multiracial team at moderator and core group level, sharing values, creating an atmosphere of trust, shared purpose and vision, using a wide reach into the community, the patient groups, the community leaders, sharing our personal stories over abstract ideas. We're not talking about things in theory, it was people's personal stories, and then focusing on solutions and plans. And here you can see some of the feedback we got about what they thought worked well. So having both sides of the dynamic represented, Black, white, patient, clinician, wider community, a small group size to share stories. So we did a lot of breakout rooms, the openness of the participants, the diverse backgrounds with a united goal, the groundwork that was done to make people feel safe and comfortable before we even started. So the moderators did a Zoom with each person one-to-one beforehand to explain the purpose and what we were going to be doing. And I think a lot of people felt secure that it was going to be a good environment to do it in. And then we started and ended each session with things like mindfulness, or what are we going to take away from the day. So what are the actions? So we've split into sort of three groups: the communication group, the medical group, and the community group. And this is where I was talking about one of the things we want to do in terms of education. But the communication group, it's about spreading the results of the workshop. So that's what we're doing today. Having a wider discussion about pain and response to pain. And that's something that's come up a little bit in the chat today, although we haven't spoken about that in a huge amount of detail. Some people felt it was important to change the name from sickle cell disease, which sounds like it's contagious, to disorder, which might sound they felt would sound better. And there's a poster. If you go to the ASCAT posters, we've got a poster about that. The medical group is trying to focus in medical schools, putting more sickle cell in the curriculum and racism modules. And I've put medical schools, but I should put nursing schools, so apologies for that. And then writing to the Royal Colleges and asking for them to make policy statements. And then the community group was about sharing stories, providing peer support, and offering the workshop to the patient groups in the UK. And we're speaking to the BBC the listening project, where we hope to be able to put two patients together to talk about specifically racism and sickle cell. So this is my last slide. This is another word cloud that we put at the end of the workshops to say, what's your impression after the series of workshops? And you can see it was really positive. It was about learning, improvement, understanding, change, meaningful change, listening, inclusion, compassion. And so it felt like even if we don't do any of our actions, just having done these workshops was a positive thing. But of course, we do want to turn this into action. So I've put here my email address. Please join us if anybody's interested in either running one of these workshops or joining one of our groups that's trying to make some of the changes. We'd absolutely love to have you along. Thank you.